Hey, welcome to another episode of Mini BTP. It's a mini edition of Beyond the Pod. I'm Brandon Mileski, Pat Micheletti with me. And Pat, we'll get to the big news shortly, but why don't you tell us about our sponsor first? On
I'd love, I'd love to, Brandon. Are you on a beer league hockey team? Check out our contest page at kfan.com for a chance to get yourself sponsored by Michelob Golden Light.
Excellent. Obviously, Pat, the big news yesterday for the Minnesota Wild is that we have some coaching changes. Dean Evason, the head coach, was relieved of his duties. Bob Woods, who was responsible for the defenseman and the penalty kill, he is gone as well. And they have hired former Predators and Devils head coach John Hines. We'll get to the John Hines portion in a bit here. But first, let's begin with Dean Evason. Were you surprised with the news yesterday, or did you see this coming?
I was surprised, but not surprised. And I say that because, listen, Dean did a great job here. I mean, he really did. When you have 200-point back-to-back seasons with the roster that he had, I think he did a really, really good job. And unfortunately, the start that they had, and we'll harken back to what the problems have been. And to me, it's been their specialty teams, and I think that just bogged them down. And they tried different things and just had a hard time getting out of it.
I'm going to agree with what you said. I think generally speaking, I thought Dean did a pretty good job here. Right, they were a very very competitive team over the last couple of years. We all know the salary cap restraints. I think you nailed it with the special teams. I think ultimately special teams were the downfall of Dean Evason and his staff. If you remember going into last season, they had struggled on the penalty kill and the power play in the playoff series before then. They decided to make some wholesale changes last year with their PK. They were much more aggressive, and it worked pretty well for most of the season. And then you get to the postseason, and they were exposed big time by Dallas. And you can make the Joel Eriksson excuse, but now that has continued into the season. Their penalty kill is the worst in hockey. You saw against Detroit the other day. How many times have we seen guys right-handed shots like David Perron just sitting on the back door, scoring pretty much easy goals? And I think ultimately, Pat, that the penalty kill and the power play was the downfall of Dean Evason, and probably what John Hines is coming in to fix.
Yeah, I would think that's part of it. And after a while, because it's been poor for 2 years, especially the playoffs, as you mentioned. After a while, they can try different things till they're blue in the face, and John Hines will do the same thing. But it's almost like you have to clear their heads completely of the past, of what went through, and start anew on all of that. And because I think after a while, Brandon, you overthink it, and when you overthink it, then your legs stop moving, then you make poor decisions, or you try too hard, or whatever the case may be. And and you're hearing that same voice telling you, well, try it this way, try it this way, all these different things. And then all of a sudden you're like, I don't know what we're doing. And so, yeah, that's a big part of what needs to be fixed.
Yeah, unfortunately, in professional sports and even in the National Hockey League, like when you get off to a start like this, where you just 5 wins in your first 19 games, you can't change all the players. You can't, and unfortunately, the coach is the one that has to take the downfall of this. But especially where they are with the cap and the players they have committed to contracts, there's not much you can do. So I agree that with Bill Guerin, that with Dean Evason as coach, this team wasn't going to be able to fix this. Now, it doesn't mean John Hines is going to be able to fix it, but a change had to have been made. And unfortunately, the coach is kind of the easiest mark.
And here's the deal, Brandon. Listen, I don't think this is a Stanley Cup roster. I don't think they think it's a Stanley Cup roster. Okay, let's put that aside.
Shouldn't be a 5-win roster, though.
It should not be a 5. Exactly. And here's what gives me some hope with this team is that you and I have talked about it. we don't think the West is that great of a conference. I think there's 3 teams that are legitimately really good. And so you have a bunch that are mixed together. We've seen this team in the past be able to find themselves where they, last year, perfect example, started out horribly and then they found it. And that, that goes into their locker room and their leadership and their all that. They find a way to come together and start to play. And so that gives me some hope that they can potentially do that. And I think that's a big reason for the coaching change, is to take it a step further and say, okay, we gotta give this team a reset, because we know they have the ability to do this. And so I think, though, they're the ones. You mentioned it. You're not changing the roster. Roster is not going to change. Maybe a player here, a player there, but it's not going to change. So collectively, they have to be the ones that get themselves out of this funk.
No, they do have some players on the roster that can change. And, the kind of the reaction I got today watching the Bill Guerin, John Hines press conference is this is a team that mentally is broken right now. And the coach is coming in to try to hit as you mentioned, hit the reset button. I don't know how many changes you're going to be able to make. Maybe you can make a few little tweaks to your penalty kill, stuff like that. But their confidence is shattered right now, specifically the confidence of a guy like Matt Boldy, who has looked nowhere near what we've seen the last 2 years out of him. I think Kirill Kaprizov, until the most recent couple of games, I thought he played pretty good against Colorado on Black Friday. And looked a little bit like his old self, but he was trending the wrong way. He got off to a slow start, and it was getting worse as the season gets along. And then you combine that with they don't have any depth guys going, right? Like Marcus Johansson's a guy they counted on the second half of last season. He doesn't look like he did last year. Combine that with poor goaltending, poor penalty kill. Defensively, they haven't been as good. You mentioned in the past they've been able to get out of things. It seems like in previous years, the last year that start they got off to was kind of like, all right, well, if we fix our defensive structure and our goaltending, we can do something, and they did. There's a lot of stuff going on here, Pat. There's a lot of different things you got to fix.
Yeah, it's almost like a total
everything
over, because they haven't been good in their own end. The goaltending has been sometimes good, sometimes inconsistent, we'll call it. The power play has been not very good. The penalty kill has not been very good. Their pace of play, their forecheck. When this team is going well, they're hounding the puck, and they're cycling, and they're doing all those things. Right now, there just seems to be hesitation, don't know, unsure, all of those things combined, and so you just put it all in a blender, really, and so I do think they need this, but again, ultimately, we can talk till we're blue in the face. They're going to have to be the ones to just.
Hello there, Pat. All right, I'm sure Pat was going to come up with a spectacular point. Well, we were about to close it out anyways. I was just going to bring up John Hines. Oh, here we got Pat Micheletti back.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Before we go, Pat, I was just going to ask you about John Hines. What do you know about him? Obviously, he's a BU guy.
Yep.
Took down your Gophers back in the day, not your specific team. But coached at Nashville, coached at New Jersey. He's one of those guys. He's got head coaching experience. That seems to happen a lot in the National Hockey League. He's got a challenging job, but also probably a job with low expectations here at this point.
Yeah, one of the few guys in hockey I haven't met. So I relied on my brother Joe, who knows him pretty well from covering the Devils and the National Hockey League, right? So he is a very detailed oriented coach, a very defensive minded coach, and so if that being said, now he talked about in his press conference about combining the defense with the offense and all that, but ultimately, Brandon, I think it's all going to start and with fixing their own end first and then building out from there. I know that's an old cliche, but really, if you're going to be a good team, you can't give up as many goals. You can't, you have to be good on the penalty kill. So I think those are going to be the step one of his coaching this team.
I think, Pat, I know we talk about all the issues they have, but I think specifically if you can fix your penalty kill, right, and if you can make major improvements to your penalty kill, the impact that has on your team, right? Because one, obviously, you're not going to allow as many goals, but two, like their PK right now is a complete buzzkill. It's a confidence killer. They know when they get a penalty that they're in a position where it's going to change the momentum of the game, and it does. And you can just mentally, you can physically see it on their from their body language. And if you can fix that little element, and then you talked about, hey, this is a team that gets aggressive on when they're doing well, aggressive on the forecheck. Well, it's harder to be aggressive on the forecheck if you're afraid to take penalties, right? You do have to play. You don't want to be reckless out there, but you do need to play a little bit of free and feel like you can be. Hey, if I'm aggressive and I happen to get a penalty, that's okay. I got a PK that's going to stop it for me. Right now, they don't have that. So I do think starting at that one little spot would have if you can fix that, and that might be a big fix, that would have a massive impact on the psyche of the entire team.
I think that is spot on because Brandon, and you brought it up. When you give up a power play goal, when you give one up, it affects the bench, right? It's just like, oh man. And so you have that negativity in your head. But when you kill off a major, a 5-on-3, everybody gets excited. And they want to go out next shift and have a good shift. And so I think you're 100% right. Fix that penalty kill and then go on from there.
All right, Pat, we'll talk to you next week. Good to see you.
So, Brandon, thank you.
All right, he's Pat Micheletti. I'm Brandon Mileski. This has been an episode of Mini BTP. We will talk to you next week right here on Beyond the Pod. Thanks for watching or listening. Bye.